The film starts with business magnate Peter Whalen speaking to his creation, a newly activated android David. Whalen refers to himself as David's father and hopes to use David in seeking out the answers to humanity's creation. David questions Whalen regarding his mortality and how David will live on long after Whalen dies. Whalen responds by making David serve him tea. In the year 2104, a colonist ship, the Covenant, is 7 years from reaching an uninhabited planet called Origi 6. It is comprised of a 15-person crew with approximately 2,000 colonists in stasis and 1,140 human embryo on board. The android Walter, an advanced android model that physically resembles David, sets up the solar sails on the ship as he goes to check on the colony's embryos. Moments later, the Covenant is hit with a neutrino blast. Walter rushes to wake up the remaining 14 human crew from their stasis. Captain Jacob is trapped in his pod when his stasis pod malfunctions and is burned alive. His wife, Daniels, watches Jacob perish as she helplessly tries to save him. The rest of the crew is taken out safely. Daniels grieves for her husband. She watches a video of him scaling a mountain, with him telling her he wishes she were there. Chris assumes the position as the ship's captain. The crew gives Jacob a send-off and ejects his body into space. The crew tends to the ship's damage. A crew then picks up a transmission appearing to be sent from another human. The rest of the crew listens to the transmission as well. Chris picks up that the transmission came from a nearby planet within the reach of few weeks from where they are, which apparently has a more habitable atmosphere than Origi 6, and not to mention it would take 7 years and 4 months before they reach Origi 6, and nobody is willing to go back into hypersleep of stasis. Chris chooses to go down there, despite objections from Daniels. She believes this new perfect planet is too good to be true. Before heading down to the planet, Chris expresses to his wife Corinne that the crew doesn't have much faith in him taking the mantle as captain, while Tennessee maintaining Covenant mothership in orbit with medic Upworth and her husband Rix. Tennessee's wife Maggie flies a shuttle to the planet's surface. The rest of the crew steps down and begins to observe their surroundings. Corinne and a crew member led were dispatched from the crew to follow up an ecology workup of the planet. The crew come across the crashed alien ship, which is where the transmission came from. Upon entering the ship, they see a holographic projection of Dr. Elizabeth Shaw, who had sent the message. Daniels even comes across her dog Tags. 2 crew members, Ledward and Hallett, who is with the other crew, inadvertently step on black spores that release small clouds that fly into their ear and nose, respectively. Both men start to feel sick and weak. Corinne guides Ledward back to the shuttle for medical attention as he pukes blood on her. Corinne and Maggie tend to Ledward, who starts violently convulsing. Maggie quarantines Ledward with Corinne still inside the room. Ledward coughs up more blood and then has something start to break out of his back. A small neomorph emerges from Ledward's back, spilling his guts out as he dies. The creature pounces on Corinne and mauls her to death. Maggie returns and tries to shoot at the neomorph, missing every shot. When Tennessee learns she is in danger, he attempts to bring the ship down to the surface to save her, but Upworth talks him out of it. She ends up hitting a tank, causing the shuttle to explode, killing herself in the process as the neomorph escapes. Tennessee and Chris soon learn of the deaths of their wives. Meanwhile, Hallett starts to get worse. Another neomorph emerges, this time out of Hallett's mouth. The creature attacks a security member by ripping off his lower jaw and throat. Hallett's husband, Sergeant Lope, mourns him. The other neomorph attacks the remaining crew. Walter protects Daniels from it and loses his hand to the creature's corrosive acid blood. The crew eventually shoots it dead. a cloaked man shows up and fires a flare, scaring the other neomorph off into the darkness. He leads the crew away to a temple in a city full of dead humanoid. It's android David from the beginning of the movie. He tells the crew that he and Dr. Elizabeth came down upon the city of the humanoids, but their ship released a deadly bioweapon that killed the entire humanoid population, and Elizabeth died when the ship crashed. Walter bonds with David over their shared creation and interest in the ways of their creators. David shows Walter a flute and teaches him how to play it. David takes Walter to a view upon the ruins of the city. David quotes Ozymandias. Through a flashback, it is shown that David descended upon the humanoid city and unleashed the black spores upon them, intentionally killing all the humanoids. Meanwhile, attempts to radio the Covenant are stymied by ion storms. Another security member, Rosenthal, steps away to clean herself off. She then comes face to face with the now grown neomorph, who rips her head off and starts devouring the rest of her. David comes across the neomorph and approaches it gently and tries to communicate with the creature, only for it to be shot dead by Chris moments later, to David's horror. Chris demands to know what's really going on and what David is up to. David explains that he used a black liquid from the planet as an experiment in creating new life forms. He observed that the creatures used hosts and killed them upon their birth. David brings Chris to a chamber filled with xenomorph eggs. Tricking Chris, David assures him it's safe. Chris looks into the egg as it opens up, and a facehugger pops out and wraps itself around Chris's head and neck. Soon, a creature bursts out of Chris's chest, killing him. It appears to have fully formed limbs and mimics David as he makes specific movements. As others search for Chris and Rosenthal, Walter finds Elizabeth's dissected corpse, used by David as material for his evolving creature design. David tells Walter that humanity is a dying species, which is why they are trying to save themselves through colonization. When Walter disagrees, David gently kisses Walter before ripping something out of him and disabling him. At the same time, Daniels discovers the corpse of Dr. Elizabeth, who appears to have had something burst out of her chest as well. Sergeant Lope and crew member Cole get found by the creatures. Lope is attacked by a facehugger. Cole quickly cut it off, leaving Lope with acid burns on his face. Cole is killed by the rapidly growing creature that came out of Chris. Lope is taken out to safety. David attempts to go after Daniels. He pins her to the ground and forces a kiss on her. Walter returns and starts to fight David, letting Daniels get out. Walter appears to gain the upper hand, but David is seen reaching for a knife. Tennessee descends to the planet's surface in another lander to rescue Daniels, Lope, and Walter, who says David has expired, meaning dead. The now fully grown xenomorph rushes to attack the crew as Tennessee flies them out of there. Daniels is attached to a harness as she swings around trying to kill the monster. Tennessee tries to fry it under the turbines, but the xenomorph evades the fire. Daniels orders Tennessee to release the lander's crane, despite the fact that it would throw them off balance. Tennessee does so, and Daniels manages to get the creature trapped in the crane. She turns the crane on and crushes the xenomorph. The survivors make it back to the Covenant. Upworth tends to Lope's facial burn. Daniels and Tennessee comfort each other after all they've been through and losing their loved ones. Daniels also tends to Walter, though she senses that something may be off about him. An unidentified life form is detected on the ship. Daniels and Tennessee run to the med bay and find Lope dead, with something having burst out of his chest. The two detect the creature's whereabouts. It stalks Upworth and Ricks as they have their intimacy in the shower. The xenomorph uses its second mouth to go through Rick's head before killing him in Upworth. Daniels lures the creature into the vehicle bay. Walter opens the hatch as Daniels tries to get the xenomorph to fall out. a large vehicle starts rolling toward Daniels. She manages to duck out of the way as the vehicle impales the xenomorph and drops out of the ship back down to the planet. Covenant resumes its voyage to Origi 6. Daniels and Tennessee go back to their original mission plan as they return to hypersleep. Daniels puts Tennessee to sleep and is prepared to have Walter do the same for her. Before she sleeps, she asks Walter if she'll help him build a cabin by the lake, referencing something she told him earlier. He doesn't immediately respond, and Daniels quickly realizes it is David. She screams and tries to break out, but David puts her to sleep. He goes over to the refrigerator of embryos and regurgitates 2 alien embryos, which he places in the cold storage with the human embryos and inspects the colonists. Posing as Walter, David then records one last transmission, reporting all crew members except Daniels and Tennessee were killed by the earlier solar flare incident before heading off on his own mission. Thanks for watching.